All right, so welcome everybody, and today we've got Ed Brew with us, all the way from the UK, and he is co-founder of LabelRadar. You moved on me. Somebody else joined and you moved. Um, but quite an extensive history in the music industry. Besides this, what I consider highly successful music product, I guess, if you will. But Ed, kind of just to lay a foundation for everybody, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into music, the industry, and then what that path has kind of looked like all the way up to founding this company or co-founding this company?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So thanks everyone for taking some time out of your Saturday to be here as well. Appreciate it. So just to give you a bit of background on me, I was doing my law degree at the time, and I started dabbling in music production, and this was in about 2008, 2009. And then obviously there was this huge rise of dubstep and electronic music. Not that it wasn't there before, but it just kind of became very commercial, very mainstream for all of a sudden. And I just kind of dived in with both feet on that kind of scene, and built up a network, and just kind of was producing music essentially. And then bit by bit, I became more interested in the business side, and it kind of culminated with I wanted to launch a compilation of music. Initially, I was releasing compilations to grow my own channel, social media channels, my YouTube channel, and this was back when you could gate Facebook with, follow me to download, that kind of thing. And you can still do similar things using third-party tools like ToneDen, by the way. Completely not sponsored, just putting it out there. And basically, I decided to put together this compilation, and it ended up being about 78 tracks, and the goal was simple. It was just to raise money for charity, and no one in that side of the industry had done too much on that space before. So I was quite fortunate in timing, in that I got a really good response from some of my, favorite artists, favorite brands at the time. And yeah, the compilation went on to sell really well and got a lot of promotion, and a lot of people got behind it. So that kind of put me on a few radars on the industry side of things, where people that I had worked with as part of that compilation then came to me and said, we'd actually like to do some other compilations, and we'd like you to be more involved with us on a licensing front, because I'd taken on this 78 track project entirely by myself, done all the rights management, all the licensing, all the promotion. So from their perspective, they were like, okay, we want to do this ourselves and bring you in. So from that, I got a few interesting offers, because I hadn't really considered a career in the music industry up until that point. From there, I went on to work at various different independent labels. I then started managing some artists, and I kind of took a step back on the artistry side myself, because you reach a point where you can hear what other people are making, and you're like, you know what, I actually feel I could help you in other ways, and I'll leave the music creation to you. That was my thought process, and I kind of enjoyed more being involved and helping them do things that they didn't know how to do, rather than trying to compete, I guess, for want of a better way of explaining it. And then I ended up doing my own kind of sync licensing company, which, if you don't know what sync licensing is, it's placing music in TV, film, video games, any kind of media like that. So it's kind of a sexy industry in the sense that it's always, cool payouts. It's a huge win-win for the artist, because you get an upfront fee, and then you usually will get royalty payouts from the performance royalties as well. So it's always like a really fun conversation to be having with artists, when you're like, oh, I pitched your music to this brand and they want to use it for this campaign. It's always nice to merge those worlds, but it's also a super competitive, congested landscape as well. So I then quite quickly moved away from sync. I was still doing sync in the side, but instead of having that as my main business, I started working in the kind of tech landscape and doing a bit of music tech crossover stuff, and just kept expanding my contacts, my network. And then from there went on to launch my own talent management agency, called the Hello Group. which I co-founded with two brothers, and basically we went on to manage everyone from Grammy winners and major label acts through to social media stars with, millions and millions of fans. And that took me through from about 2016 up until 2020. And I left that venture earlier this year. Had a crazy ride, a lot of fond memories there. And in the background of all that, there was LabelRadar, which went from me just identifying a problem that I could see in how fragmented the worlds of labels and artists were in they just couldn't really communicate effectively. And I saw how frustrating it was on the artist side. You send your music to a label that you're a big fan of, and then you don't hear back from them, and it kind of builds resentment, right? And that's just natural. Then on the label side, I would go and work in a label, and I'd be like, so who's handling the demo submissions? And it would almost be like was it that intern, and who's got the login? And you then finally get to the bottom of it, and you log in, and there's 6,000 unread emails in there, and you're just like, well, they're never going to get listened to. It's just, you start from day one again. So for me, I was like, this just is completely ridiculous that no one has built a better system. And so I just thought someone would, right? The problem was so obvious to me that I was like, someone will do something about this. And some people attempted a few different things, but none of them really addressed the core problems as I saw them. And so LabelRadar just stayed in the background, and I mentioned it as an idea to a few people. And one of them, the co-founder, Derek, he just loved it, fell in love with it the same way as I did. And we just took it and ran with it. And we got some amazing developers on board who saw the vision as well. And so they came on board for equity rather than upfront cost. And yeah, we've just kind of been growing it ever since. And nowadays, on LabelRadar, we service some of the top music entities in the world, such as imprints of major labels. So we have subsidiaries of Universal, subsidiaries of Warner. We also work with some of the biggest independents like Armada Music, Monstercat, NCS. And whilst my background is very electronic music focused, I hope that there's some universal learnings in what I've come across that apply, all throughout the industry as a whole.
I followed my own rules and muted myself. So I want to go kind of backwards and follow in order the way you described it on just a few questions, because I have a selfish motive. There are points that I want to drive home to my community. But you had mentioned, the networking in the music industry.
Yeah.
Now that you're really an insider, how important is, and you're the second really attorney lawyer that we've had on in a two weeks in a row now that ended up in the music business, which I just find funny because most of the attorneys I know are a different breed. They're no offense, they're strange, different sense of humor.
Oh, none taken. I didn't pursue it beyond the degree level, so okay. That's fine.
I just find it ironic we've had two of you in a row. But how important is networking with other artists and people that are established in the industry? Because I'm really trying to drive this point home, and even in our I'm not afraid to say this, our community members are in here, some of them, but even our own community, I'm trying to stress the importance to them of networking with each other, supporting each other, giving ideas to each other, sharing resources with each other, and it's hard to get people to do that.
Yeah.
So I want to have another voice come along and reiterate how important it is, both laterally and then growing, looking up to people in the industry.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, there's almost two sides to it, right? There's building your network of peers, like other artists, and then there's building your kind of team and your network of industry-facing people. So speaking first to the peer side of it, so when it comes to networking with other artists, the most valuable, I mean, to me, this is like one of the most crucial things an artist can do, because what I always tell artists that ask me, like, what's your number one tip kind of thing, I always say, find your wolf pack. And the reason I say that is, for me, when I was just starting out, I just happened to get lucky and met some really nice friends who were all fellow producers, and we we just had different skill sets. We were all champions for each other, and we had a shared sense of humor. And you don't have to have all these things. You don't have to like have skill sets that don't overlap, or whatever it might be. All you need is artists that you can get on with, that you can get feedback from, that you can kind of use as a sounding board, and ultimately that you can just be a champion of each other's music. Because no one wants to be the first person to like your status on Facebook. No one wants to be that first cheerleader, right? So having a few people who are willing to do that, who are willing to help you in that way and start the fire, it's just invaluable when it comes to growth as an artist, because not only are they going to be supporting, you know, you and each other publicly, but you're also able to get feedback. Because one of the things I see so often is artists are way too close to their own music, and you can't hear that, you know, it's actually lacking a bit on the mix and master, or it's a bit generic, or it sounds really similar to this other thing, or whatever it might be. You know, getting different opinions is, you know, you don't have to follow their advice, but definitely be open to it, and hopefully they can give you constructive criticism to help you improve, because that is the only way you'll improve, right? If you don't have these people who, you know, push you slightly and are like, oh, actually, I'm not sure about that synth, or I'm not sure about the drums, or the whatever it might be. If you don't have that, you will never have a reason to kind of improve beyond yourself, beyond your own critique of your own music. And every artist is naturally too close to their own product to be able to critique it properly. So definitely having a wolf pack is my number one tip for peer networking. And, you know, being an artist can be lonely as well. Like, just having some people that you get on with is super, super valuable, and hearing what they're coming out with. And, you know, when it comes to talking about struggles that you're facing, you know, they don't have to be your best friend, but they probably will end up being close friends, just from the nature of being an artist and talking to other artists. You get each other in a different way to people who aren't also an artist. And yeah, I mean, coming down to the skill set side of things, that's just kind of a icing on the cake. So for example, a modern day artist has to be, you know, a marketing guru. They have to be amazing at all the different parts that go into being a successful artist. And for you to expect yourself to automatically be able to do all of those things from day one or day 100, you know, having people who are stronger in those areas is only going to benefit you. Because, you know, let's say you're better at social media and they're better at mixing and mastering, or whatever it might be. You know, you can offer each other value so naturally there, that instead of having to like hire people and build a team, you're able to just do it as like a friendship type of thing, and build your network that way. So definitely something that I'd look into. Then on the kind of industry side of things, I mean, it's true that, you know, it's who you know. As much as we want it to be an even playing field, who you know is, I would go as far as like 80 to 90% of it, which is really unfortunate, but there are advantages to that. You know, when an A&R only has a limited amount of time in the day, if their friend says to them, oh, hey, would you check out this guy that I'm good friends with, I really rate his stuff, that's going to get you in the door, as opposed to just blanket emailing a ton of people. So I would be, as an artist, I would see networking as just as important as learning about drum patterns or music theory. You know, building your personal network of contacts, even if they're not, like, you don't have to go in and be like, I need to be friends with the CEO, or I need to know the exact A&R at these different majors. You know, the people that I first started talking to were, you know, interns, or they were just starting out and doing their own independent thing at a label, and they've gone on to then be hired at bigger entities, or to do different things with their careers. And you never know where someone's going to end up. So there's no such thing as a bad contact in my book, because as I mean, as long as they're not dominating all of your time, I guess, just being relatively strategic without being fussy about it. I think you can have a strategy without being cynical. And yeah, just don't write someone off just because they haven't got like a fancy title right now. If you can genuinely see that they're kind of passionate or you get on well with that person, why not build a relationship there?
Yeah, I want to dig deeper into a couple of those as well. I mean, the Wolfpack thing is really the concept that we're trying to build with Insane the Label, and I'm trying to drive that point home that, man, even before you drop a song or a video, bring the concept in, and we've got 25, 30 people in there right now, 25 things. Leave it in there, let everybody critique it, get some feedback, get an outside perspective, because even though I agree 100% what you said, that you can get too close to your own sound, your own music, that you're blinded by things. But I think even beyond that, the Wolfpack, which is great and you need, that is the first step, can get into a habit of doing things a certain way. And if they can visit another camp or visit another studio or visit another sound, it always keeps you sharp and fresh and what's going on outside the walls.
Definitely. And when you look at like the amount of stuff that you learn on a daily basis and then multiply that by the people in your Wolfpack, like 5 or 7 people, however many, you know, it can be as little as 3 or whatever. But, you know, from my personal experience, it was about 5 or 6 people. And, you know, you look at how much you can develop on a daily basis and times that by all the people in there. Like it's crazy not to think that there's value in that.
Yeah. And the other point of building relationships with the unknowns, and we talked about this before, but this is the difference between, and this comes from experience, but I'll go to a show of, let's say, Dax, who's got a pretty strong small circuit following here in hip hop. He can sell out small venues of 1,000 people, and everybody I go with, the after or the before, they're all lining up to get pictures with Dax. It's going to be very great for the Instagram. You know, I'm rocking with this artist. All the while, Brittany, his manager, is sitting over there scrolling on her phone bored. And if you're really serious about your music career, I would have been scouting the room for who is in his entourage. Where is his manager? Where's the guy who booked this show? The roadies, any of that stuff. And because they're actually probably going to have time and be surprised if somebody wants to talk to them. And they are really some great connections that can open doors for you. I'm sure the artists, everybody wants to picture with them, but I think we lose sight of that so many times about the other people. And also to drive home your point, I interviewed Chris Schwartz, which we'll talk about this when we get to LabelRadar. Chris Schwartz on here, founder of Rough House Records, and he said never once did we pick up a group that mailed or emailed or just sent their stuff in. It was 90%. An attorney came to us, an A&R came to us, a friend came to us, and pestered us. You have to listen to this. Oh, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. And eventually, they wore them down and they listened. And they said, "Oh my God, you're right. It is great." So
there's a lot to be said, like when you listen to music in the right frame of mind as well. Like you can listen to a track one day and just write it off, and the next day you happen to be in a different mood and it hits you different, you know?
Yeah. And with so I'll turn this into marketing, but with the familiarity of a song, the exposure to a song. Tell me, everybody in here, that you have not had this experience. A song comes on the radio, you've heard people talking about it, and you're like, I don't get what the big deal is. 3 weeks later, because they play it every 30 minutes, you're like, oh, I get it now, and you know the chorus and you're doing the lyrics. It's because of the familiarity. They at times can train us. What is the new sound? What is the good look?
Oh yeah.
So that's why it's important. Don't give up. Sometimes you got a banger of a song, and you guys put $500 behind it, promoting it for 3 months, and don't do your advertising right, and it just gets shown to, you know, several thousand new people. But there's not that repetition to build comfort and familiarity with it to let it grow on people.
Yeah, and I mean, look, these guys who make these decisions, you know, they don't get it right all the time either. Like Salt and Pepper Push It, you know, that was originally a B-side. You know, it was just like, oh yeah, we'll put this on there. And then it was only when it was actually sent out to the radios that then it got picked up and became a hit, because they were saying, actually, we want to play the flip side, because that's the banger hit. You know, and that's just one example of countless times where, you know, there's been sleeper hits. It happens all the time.
What was on the A side of that?
I honestly couldn't tell you, and that's the point, right?
Sync licensing. So I know Red is very interested in that. I'm very interested in that. I think I've talked probably to Austin, Penny, everybody. It's very interesting, but you say it's a congested area. So I got two quick questions on that. More congested than uploading to Spotify and trying to get the attention of a label? That's part one. And then the second part of my question would be these companies that exist online that submit for you, supposedly to all these, or is that a good approach, or do you have a better suggestion? Do we sneak and watch the credits on Netflix to see who the music supervisor was, and then find them on LinkedIn and try to build a relationship? I mean, how would you approach it if you had an artist you were trying to get?
So, I mean, I love the hustle of that approach, like getting out, finding the music supervisor, hunting them down, scouring their Twitter for an email or sliding in the DMs. You know, it's a fun journey, but I would say for the amount of work that it takes, the success rates on that are negligible. And that's because these guys, so you compared it to uploading to Spotify, right, in terms of congestion. So I would say it's, even though obviously Spotify is more congested, I would say your chances of getting through on the music supervisor side of things are even harder. Like, you're more likely to get picked up for Spotify editorial, in my opinion, unless you go through the tried and trusted method that music supervisor uses, or you get very, very lucky. So when it comes to approaching the music supervisors, I mean, these guys have more demand on them to listen to things than a typical music consumer, which is why I would say it's harder than Spotify. And they have their tried and trusted methods. You know, they're very set in their ways almost, because they need to be able to clear the rights and they need to do it quickly. So they have their kind of trusted sources for music, and then if something comes in and it's not from there, it's so much risk for them to then, and headache and workload to be like, okay, and who owns the rights and who's the publisher and all of this stuff. It's just not worthwhile for them when they could find a similar quality piece of music going through a library. And when I say a library, I don't mean like a stock music library. I mean like a rights society that has a collection that they can trust. And a lot of them use different portals. Like, I think disco.ac is probably the industry standard for sync these days. So yeah, it's a very tricky landscape to make your mark in. And when you say going through a trusted source, could you give an example of who you have in mind there? Because there's a few different routes.
Well, I'm just saying, so does it, if you were managing somebody at, you said your management company was Hello?
Yeah, the Hello Group.
And you had a new artist come in. I mean, how would you guys pitch that to sync? Is it because, once again, we go back to you had built relationships, and that would be the approach?
It would be a relationships thing. So the sync side would probably be, I mean, it would depend entirely on what that artist situation was from a record label perspective as well. Some distribution sides offer sync services as well. It's almost too nuanced to give like a generic catch-all answer to, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of services out there that typically, if you're an independent artist, let's say, and you're self-distributing, whoever you're going through as distribution, whether that's AWOL or let's say Symphonic, for example, TuneCore probably have a sync division. I mean, all of those distributors that I've just mentioned have their hand in the sync side of things as well. But that's not to say that it wouldn't be worth you looking into some non-exclusive partnerships, territory by territory as well, to try and get more people pitching your music for sync. However, what I typically find is that the companies that do it the best ask for exclusivity because they don't want to be pitching your music if 10 other people are as well. So just be very careful. Firstly, if you're going to go the exclusive route, make sure you do a lot of due diligence on that company's track record, because, you know, realistically, there's only so many syncs that they will have access to in any given calendar period. Whereas multiply that by 4 different non-exclusive deals and you're probably getting pitched a lot more. Equally, they might be a huge company, but if they're a huge company, they're going to have a huge catalog. And is your music niche enough and distinct enough to fill a unique requirement for them when they're pitching? Or are you just going to be a kind of 3rd tier option if they can't use their, you know, top 40 artists that they work with and stuff like that? So it's definitely a science.
Okay. I could stay on sync all day. I won't do that to everybody.
Yeah.
They'll have a chance to ask their own questions. I want to move to well, let's just move to, because we're already 11:30 my time. So let's move to LabelRadar.
Sure.
So I've got 2 things I want to say about it up front, and then I want you to talk a little bit about it. The first thing is, so I just ran an ad where I'm trying to look for the first song that I want to distribute through a new deal I've got with HuMag Distribution, which will be powered through Sony Orchard. And I want my first song to be a real banger, right? So I put this ad out trying to find, I got 186 song submissions. I'm trying to give them an honest listen and real feedback. I didn't expect that many, but you know how long it takes to go through 186 songs?
Yeah.
And try, and I won't do this to everybody, but to send an email back with some honest feedback, or appreciation, or build a relationship. Man, it's going to take me a lot longer than I expected. The second thing is, some of these songs, and there's nothing wrong with this necessarily, but they don't even get to the song till a minute, 30 seconds in, minute 30 in. The best part is a minute 30 in. So I got to wade through all that. So when I try to imagine some account at Universal who has 6,000 emails, like you said, that they've given it to some interns to try to scour through, nobody's taking that serious. Nobody's getting past the first 30 seconds of your song. So one of the things that I love about LabelRadar, and I've used the service a couple times, I'm actually able to pick the portion of the song where I want it to start when that label opens it up. To me, that's magic. So you've got 2 choices. You can do like the baby who recognized this phenomenon going on in attention spans, and he comes in on the first beat on every song, right out the gate hard. You can change the whole way you make music, or you can use LabelRadar and actually pick the portion of the song that you know is going to hit the hardest for the people listening to it and save them time. So I thought that was a brilliant strategic move from you guys. You've got something like 55,000 artists already on the platform you've been helping.
Yeah, it's actually up to about 65,000 now. Yeah. Okay.
So just kind of break it down for everybody, really what it does, how it works, and why they should be using it.
Sure. Yeah. So when you send your music through LabelRadar, like Scott said, we prompt you to choose what you consider to be the best 20 seconds clip within your track. So it's really important for 2 reasons. One is, from your perspective as the artist, you're in control over the first impression for the first time ever, because, like it or not, when you send your music and you send like a streaming link or a downloadable file, they will download it and they'll resent you for having to download it, and then they will click to a random point in the song. They are never, ever, 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 ever going to sit and listen from the first second right the way through. It just never happens. They will click to a few wave points. And I mean, not to make you too cynical about it, but I've seen quite advanced A&Rs. They literally just click to a point, listen for like 2 seconds, click to a point, listen for like 2 seconds, and that's it. If that is your shot, right? And it is terrifyingly limited. So what we're doing is we're saying, actually, this is what the artist is saying is the very best part of the track. So this is what you need to listen to. And if you're not feeling this part of the track, then you don't need to listen to the rest of it. But if you're feeling this part of the track, then you can go on to listen to the full song, check out more about the artist. And what we're trying to do is make it as easy as possible to connect those dots and find those kind of bits that do work together, where it is the sound that that A&R is looking for. And all the while, you know, when an action is taken on your track, we give you the real-time notification of that, so that you're not left wondering, have they listened? What happened? Did they like it? Did they not? You know, as soon as they've taken an action, so you're not left like with your release stagnating while, you know, culture moves on and you think, oh, maybe it's worth hanging on to get signed. No, you just know exactly what's going on at all times. Which I think is just really important for planning a release and growing as an artist, not having to stagnate and to wait around. And from the, just to give you a bit of context, from the decision maker standpoint, they will know within 5 seconds if they want to listen to the full song. Like, clipping your song down to 20 seconds is just a convenience thing. It's not disrespectful, because they'd actually listen to less of it without that, right? This way they get taken in, and this is why mixing and mastering is so important, is because when they get taken in those, within 5 seconds, they know, is this mixed and mastered to the level we look for? Is this the type of music we're currently accepting? You know, all of those split-second decisions take place in that really, really short time space. And so many artists that I've worked with, they focus so much on, oh, I want to make this melody and I want to make it, you know, bouncy and whatever. But they spend minimal time on the mixing and mastering side of things, which, keep in mind, when someone listens to your demo, it's not like they will just listen to you and they won't have listened to anything beforehand and they won't have listened to anything after it. You are in a stream of music that they are reviewing. And so you're being compared to someone who, for example, has, you know, invested in getting a proper mix and master done, or has learnt it themselves. And when you compare quality like that, if I go from a well mixed and mastered track to hearing an unmixed one, straight away, even if that melody is super on point, I'm straight away like, this isn't good, because it's not mixed and mastered well and it hits my ear differently. And the same is true for any experienced A&R. If you aren't sending them something that's clean, you're just writing yourself off from those first 5 seconds, regardless of how good the actual song is from a melody and structure perspective. The reason I'm coming in so hard on this is because so many artists don't do it, or they overlook it. And I really want to make it clear how important it is.
I needed to hear that. That's great, because I'm more of the focus on the branding and the marketing aspects of it. And I can't even honestly hear a good mix and master too well. I get better, but I know good music and I know when somebody has the it factor. But when I see the it factor, if I look at this guy and I'm like, oh man, he's got it, the music can be bad because I can see the potential. But you make a lot of sense when you're talking about an executive sitting in a room for the A&R department and going through 50 songs that day, which now I know what the pain is like, and a constant stream of hearing that quality. He's ready for the artist who has their act together, who's already, you know, Mark Berry on our podcast said it best. I think they want to find acts that are already on the 50-yard line. They're halfway to the goal. Then they can just fine tune some stuff. So that makes a lot of sense to me, that focus on that mix and master for that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what your goalposts are, whether that's major label or whether it's just starting to get some releases signed through labels, or whether it's just your independent releases. Like, the same logic applies to some extent at a consumer level when they're listening through the Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify, for example. There's a certain reason why certain songs just like hit you. And sure, a lot of that is what the structure of the song is and your taste in music, but I guarantee you that mix and master is on point as well.
So to push back on what you said, you said that, you know, and I agree with you, it's 90% relationships. Would you say then that LabelRadar is a relationship?
We're taking that headache
from
away from you. Yeah, so the way that we work is, instead of having to hunt down the A&R contacts email, because, by the way, for a lot of the stuff that's listed publicly, it's a demo box a demo inbox that is no longer checked, right? So you can go on LinkedIn, you can hunt down the current A&Rs, you can look up the email formatting, and you can try and do all that hustle yourself. And I wouldn't discourage you from doing that if you've got the time to do that. But that's all time that you could be learning other things, right? When we've already done all that homework for you, and we've got those relationships with the A&Rs where they trust our portal. So you might find that email contact and send it through, and then just get redirected to us if it's someone we work with, for example. You know, it's, for us, we want artists to focus on what we think artists should be focusing on, which is the music, right? That's what they want to be focusing on, rather than having to hustle these contacts. And so that's kind of an important part of what we offer as a service, is removing that headache entirely and being able to tell you your track has been listened to like 37 seconds ago and they really like the clip and they're going to listen to the full song. Or, hey, unfortunately, they weren't feeling it, but, you know, keep your head up. One thing that I would say as well is, you know, the vast majority of submissions do get rejected. And it's not because they're a bad song necessarily. It's because there is so many criteria that go into a label's decision when they're signing a track that, you know, you might get rejected, but it doesn't mean that another label wouldn't accept that track with open arms. You know, it doesn't make it a bad track. And I think a lot of artists put, you know, they get shot down once and then they stay down, and that track is, you know, okay, fine, I'll move on to the next one. But definitely take responses with a pinch of salt. Like, if you are getting rejected, I mean, it's not necessarily that you've got a bad song. It could just be that you're sending it to the wrong labels, or that perhaps it's something that is not currently commercially viable and you need to prove it yourself and do a self-release. You know, there's a lot of options that you can take. Just because a label says no, it's not game over. And it might sound weird for me saying that as the CEO of LabelRadar, but very much it's a good time to go independent as well. So yeah.
And you can do one song deals now with labels. And
the vast majority of label deals now are one song deals. Yeah, the whole kind of tying people in for 3 albums or whatever, sure, it might still be more on the major side of things, but certainly in all the big labels we work with, it's track by track.
Okay, so last question, then I'll turn it over to the people. So if you were starting fresh today, you don't have these contacts, but you met Nick Skaggs and you said, man, this kid's got it. He's got the potential. He's got the it factor. But we're starting from ground zero, not much of a budget. He don't really have a following yet on social media. Kind of what would be your high level view of a tack plan on how to get this rolling?
It would, to be honest, it would come down to what Nick's prepared to do for like a content perspective. Like, is he strong at talking directly to his audience if we do like an Instagram live, or is he a funny guy and we can bring that personality out in his content? You know, what you've got to look at nowadays is that when someone's not consuming your content, they're consuming someone else's content, right? It's a super competitive attention span game right now. And when someone's scrolling through their newsfeed, if I come across Nick's content and it's him playing a piano and singing along, I'm probably going to keep scrolling. If that content is set up in an interesting location, or there's some kind of spin on it that makes it more attention grabbing, I'm going to pause and I'm going to give it a chance. And what we would need to figure out is what is Nick's best way to get a chance with people. So I wouldn't say there's like a universal strategy for it, but I would say each artist has their strong points, and we would just need to figure out what those were.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always kind of promote, and I think this ties in, and I know some of you've heard me say it's 10 times you're sick of it, but I got to drive the points home so it sticks, is I always challenge artists. You know, if I took you to a party in LA or New York, dropped you off in there, there's 100 people in there, you can't talk about music. You can't tell anybody you're an artist. Who are you going to connect with and how? So the buff bodies and the gym rats are going to find each other, right? And they're going to talk about supplements and working out. And the LGBTQ community will find each other and talk about that. And then you'll have people that are into meditation and taking ayahuasca, and then the anime group, and then the Christian group is going to talk about their faith, whatever. You'll gravitate towards a group and you'll find commonality there and love that conversation. I think that's what we should do. We don't have to do it in our music, but if I'm into anime, or I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan or whatever, then I probably should rock that in my video, or that shirt, or have it in the background all over my shelves or something like that, to try to, you know, if I'm an MMA guy and I've got an old school Hoist Gracie shirt on, people are going to roll by and be like, oh, that, you know, Hoist Gracie, if you're an MMA fan, you got another reason to want to interact with me.
And it's all about relatability, right? Like if I, as a music consumer, can relate to that artist, I'm instantly a whole load of steps closer to actually supporting them and checking out their music and investing time into them.
This is a true story, and this is one of the reasons I really believe in this. I did a marketing video on how to market for hair salons a couple years ago, and it's got like 30,000 views. But I wore a Rock M t-shirt. It just had a picture of him and it said Microphone Fiend. Now, if you're not an old school 80s hip hop guy, you don't know who Rock M is. But I had people like freak out in the comments. That t-shirt is so awesome. They were sending me emails, and I picked up 2 clients because they immediately, it wasn't just the marketing, but, oh, I could work with this guy. Like, you know, this old white guy who knows who Rock M is, strong enough to have a t-shirt. Like, you know, I'm going to hang out with him. And it actually helped me pick up some clients. So, you know, I truly believe in that, especially when you're building that foundation, that first 1,000 true fans, right?
Definitely.
Trying to connect.
You can do, it's the same thing we used to tell our influencers as well, is, you know, 1,000 dedicated fans, you can do so much more with than 100,000 casual ones.
Absolutely. All right, guys, I've dominated the conversation as always, my long-winded self. Show of hands, who's got a couple questions for Ed?